is all set to introduce the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners Bill 2023 in the Rajya Sabha today to regulate the appointment, conditions of service in terms of office of the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners, and the procedure for transaction of business by the Election Commission. Big update coming in. So this is the centre seeking an independent mechanism which is independent of government control. My colleague Aishwarya joining us on the broadcast with the details. Aishwarya, break this down for us on the significance of the bill and the kind of changes that it aims to bring.
Well, certainly a very important bill in terms of the legislative. Arjun Ram Meghwal is going to table and introduce the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners bill, and this will certainly will be seeking an independent mechanism, as you mentioned, and independent of the government control. Supreme Court 5-judge constitutional bench led by Justice K.M. Joseph in March 23 judgment and has stated that appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioner member shall be made by 3-member committee comprising of 1 Prime Minister, leader of opposition, and also in case of LOP not available, then the leader of the largest opposition party. But in the Supreme Court, this has been the norm, which will continue to hold good until the law is being in the parliament. So that's what had been stated. And today Arjun Ram Meghwal is going to introduce this bill, to which certainly the opposition parties have started attacking the government. It is Arvind Kejriwal on one hand. He is stating that whatever the Supreme Court passes a judgment, if the government doesn't like it, they bring ordinance, and that is the case that they have done in terms of the Delhi ordinance bill, and now it is being done in terms of the election of the Chief Election Commissioner as well. The Supreme Court CGI is also included in the list, but this is now will be exempted if the bill will be introduced. Certainly Arjun Ram Meghwal is going to introduce this bill. The opposition parties is mounting attack on the centre, stating that whatever the Supreme Court judgment comes out, when the centre doesn't like it, they comes up with a bill or with an ordinance and struck down the Supreme Court judgment, which clearly shows that the government doesn't believe in the judiciary, doesn't believe in the legislative, and certainly the bills are coming to the parliament. This will certainly create a huge controversy. Enlarge the opposition parties will mount an attack, but it is to be seen that whether today Arjun Ram Meghwal, Law Minister, will bring that particular bill and will introduce it in the upper house of the parliament or not. But it has already started gathering a lot of controversies and the statements coming from the opposition parties who had been opposing this move of the government.
Absolutely. But to give a little more context into this entire controversy and the reason why the opposition could raise an objection to it, Aishwarya, let's also talk about what the Supreme Court had said, because the Supreme Court had backed and had spoken about the appointment of the Election Commissioner through a panel in which he had very clearly mentioned, the bench had mentioned, the Prime Minister, Chief Justice of India and the leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha. This panel would comprise in ensuring that we have an election commissioner. This is what the Supreme Court had said, after which this bill is expected to be brought in the Rajya Sabha.
Well, certainly, to elect a Chief Election Commission, it was decided by the Supreme Court earlier that, 3-member panel will be there. 1 will be the Prime Minister, 1 will be the leader of opposition, or in case there will be no leader of opposition, then the leader of the largest single party and CGI. Now, when this bill will be introduced by Arjun Ram Meghwal in the Rajya Sabha, it has been mentioned in that particular bill that CGI will not be involved, and it will be just the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition, who the 2-member panel will decide that who will be the Chief Election Commissioner, to which it has been opposed by certainly the opposition parties. And
for a big change, and that's the reason why the opposition could also be raising an objection to it. Aishwarya, stay with us. We have Pranesh Kumar Roy also joining us on the broadcast. Before that, Mr. Manikim Tagore of the Congress also joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Manikim Tagore, your first response to the Union Law Minister bringing in the Chief Election Commissioner bill in the Rajya Sabha today?
It is very unfortunate and see this kind of thing, because when Parliament is in session, without taking anybody into confidence and even the opposition parties into confidence, the centre has moved to dilute another constitutional bench judgment of Supreme Court. Bill on the appointment of CEC and EC states that the selection committee will comprise of Prime Minister, LOP in Lok Sabha, and the Cabinet Minister is a very wrong precedent. And because a Supreme Court in March 2023 had said that appointment of CEC and ECs shall be done by the President on the recommendation of the Committee of PM, LOP and CJ. Because this is the way on which the CBA has been selected. Therefore, it should not be the Cabinet Minister. It is going to be like Mr. Amit Shah and Mr. Modi is going to sit together and decide about who is going to be the election commissioner, which will be unacceptable for a democratic process. And all the democratic parties should unite, and we should all defeat them in the parliament. It's a very unfortunate move by the government, and the government is just playing with the democratic traditions. And in a year when before the election to 2024, the election commission plays a very important role. That the election commission, this way, if they want to control all independent institutions like this way through proxies, is unacceptable. And we hope that democratic forces in the parliament will unite and defeat these kind of acts by the government.
Okay, so you believe that the appointment of election commissioner in a crucial year like this ahead of the Lok Sabha elections will become more opaque with this bill being brought by the government?
Yes, this government is trying to, why Supreme Court interfered in March 23? Because the appointment of ECs were questionable, and it was those people very close to the establishment as being made. EC is an institution which is independent of government, independent of the parliament, independent of the judiciary. And that institution also they wanted to capture. This is the way they are demolishing all the institutions in India. And this is a bill which is going to demolish the independence of the Election Commission of India also.
Okay. So, despite the Supreme Court being in favor of a panel comprising the Chief Justice of India, this bill is being brought in. You're saying it will become more opaque. In fact, Pranesh is also joining us on the broadcast. Yes, Pranesh.
Yeah, thanks, Pratibha. Mr. Tagore, you can say what you want, but when it comes to numbers in the parliament, both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, how do you think it will pan out? Because we saw what happened with the Delhi Services Bill.
The main important thing is that this arrogance of a majority, brutal majority, or the management on through the ED, CBA and IT of managing the other alliance partners like OSRP and BJD, they are doing this thing. They are not having numbers in Rajya Sabha, but they are managing through the pressure tactics of using ED, CBI and IT. Therefore, only they are able to go through these kind of things. And people are watching, and people of India won't allow these kind of things to be allowed. Previously also, whomever is doing this thing, people of India has punished it. And I hope that this bill will also be facing the same test.
Mr. Manikam Tagore, just allow me to add some context here. So you began by saying that, look, the government is trying to do this because they have zero trust and trust in what the Supreme Court had said. You were talking about the 5-judge verdict by the Supreme Court, in which the Supreme Court asked the government that from here on, the selection of the Chief Election Commissioner will be done by a panel which will have the Leader of Opposition and the CJI. But sir, let me just remind you and our viewers that just in the case of the Delhi Services Bill, even in this case, the Supreme Court did leave a room for the centre to bring in a law. What would you say?
What the Supreme Court of India suggested is a very important thing, because CEC is an election commission, is an independent organization. It should not be partisan, and it should not be controlled by the existing government, whichever government. But Mr. Amit Shah and Mr. Modi wants to control the election commission, wants to intervene in the election commission in the critical elections also. Election commission's independence should not be...
No, I understand that point, and we are trying to get the BJP to respond to the political charge you are making, Mr. Manikam Tagore. But my final question to you, if the Supreme Court has allowed the parliament to make laws and the government to bring in a legislation, what is your objection?
They are not against the law. Yeah, what I'm saying is I'm not against the bill. The content of the bill is the problem.
Okay.
How in place of CJ, Chief Justice of India, how Mr. Amit Shah can be there,
Right.
or Mr. Arjun Megwal can be there.
But Mr. Tagore, so far, before the Supreme Court came out with that verdict and its order, do you know how CECs were appointed? The Prime Minister's, the President on advice of the Cabinet would appoint the CEC. Are you saying all that that process was flawed? I think we've lost that line with Mr. Tagore, but Pratibha, this is a big story ahead of the Prime Minister's speech in Lok Sabha. Political fireworks already has started on this. We have to take a short break. We'll return to this on the other side.